Hello, everybody. So today is Thursday, the 22nd of May, and here we are with our friend John Carter, and he's going to. It's very successful his appearance here. I have a lot of good comments, so from you, reactions, and so on. So I'm just going to just go ahead and John, hi, how are you today? Where are you?
I'm in Brazil at a ranch.
Okay, the volume a little bit up for some reason.
Sure.
It was
Okay. How about
okay.
now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was okay when we were trying it out, but then you went out a little bit. Okay, so what do you have for us today, John?
Well, I have kind of going more in depth, where I'm a subject matter expert in my own life and how it's affected me in my own research and how I came to an obvious conclusion of what's really going on, this enmity in the world where we find ourselves today. And I used my notes, actually notes I put together to explain to my daughters um, their dad's craziness, and so they could understand my own thought processes. And I think it helps to educate other people, maybe. And of course, once again I'm a layman. I am no academic, but I did gather this information from scholars and theologians, and it's black and white. It's really easy to understand, except the enemy is trying to confuse us. And once we can see,
Once you see it, it's very, as they say, it's very easy to unsee it. It's also very important what you say that, look, this is the conclusion of my research, because sometimes people just take it for granted that what you say or what you present to other people is an opinion that you just happen to have. And I always try to explain, look, is not the premise of my argument, okay? Is the conclusion of it. I've been thinking about this, and this is the conclusion I have reached. Of course, it is an opinion. It's not an empirical fact that every T has been crossed, but this is the conclusion I have reached based on this and this and this and that. It's not just something that I happen to, think today. So I think that's very important that you emphasize that this you have been studying this and researching this, and it is the conclusion you have reached, and the one that you want to share with us.
that's correct, and it's one based on love at its core. I love people. I love land. I love animals, and and I think it's the message of the Catholic faith, to be just very blunt, and that's why I have no problem saying it, no problems, because it's the truth, and it's
John,
just very.
John, since you are American, were you always a Catholic, or have you? If you don't have to answer, I mean, but I'm just curious because you brought up, the Catholic faith and so on, and how faithful you are. You didn't say that. I'm saying that how faithful you are to the church. Were you always a Catholic since you are from Texas, or have you converted, or what? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course, I was baptized in 1966 in the old rite as a Catholic. The priest that baptized me himself was a descendant of the German immigrants from Alsace-Lorraine in central Texas. That man ended up marrying me before he passed away, and so I was raised Catholic. I was an altar boy as a child. My Catholic roots come from Irish Catholic, from Galway, from actually Portona, um, about an hour east of Galway. And so that's my Catholic side, but I'm a typical American. I'm a mixture of Scotch, Irish, English, German, and and Presbyterian and Episcopalian, and so and a lot of Freemasonry, because you're not Protestant if you're not a Freemason. So let me just be clear. In the United
Explain,
States,
explain, explain.
uh, I would say, except for Episcopalians, every Protestant sect is at its core has got Freemasonry at its roots, and there's a large percentage of the pastors that are Freemasons. Southern Baptists, 40 to 50%, for instance. So it's just the truth. So that when you put it into perspective of American history, we were founded by Freemasons. We were founded as deists, not as a Christian nation. I don't care what they say, that's not true. There were plenty of Christians in the United States at the founding, but the founding fathers were deists. They were Freemasons. They were not Christians. Go to Thomas Jefferson's house and look at Monticello, and you've got all this occult symbolism in the trim around his house and not one cross. And go to the U.S. Capitol, it's the same thing. It's the truth. So we need to once we can wrap our hands around that, and Pope Leo the 13th, I think, was his encyclical, or his not encyclical, but talking about Americanism, the heresy of Americanism. As an American, I was baptized into that heresy as well, and I as a Catholic, I was I would say American Catholics are different, obviously, because we're a different continent, and I'm not saying being judgmental. I'm just saying it's the truth. And if you go read this stuff and have an open mind and truly searching for the truth, we can come to a conclusion that the American project heavily influenced American Catholicism from its founding, the first bishop, John Cahill, whose brother was a Freemason. And that eventually had an impact in the 1960s at Vatican II. And that's the truth. So if we care about the truth, then let's embrace all of it.
Before you start today's presentation, because I'm getting old and sometimes I forget, I think I have to ask him this. Remember that photograph that you showed us last week about the two churches in Brazil that one, the old one, had been brought down, what is the word, demolished, and in its place it was something else, and you show the two photographs, and the old church was that beautiful old crucifix that your father-in-law had gifted and so on. And then you had, instead of that, you had a sort of a something there with a kind of, it looked like something like an angel, or what was it, sort of flying about, sort of like that. And that was very, very different. I mean, the message was very, very different. And this week, I don't know whether you noticed, or perhaps it's just me, because those two photographs really did caught my attention. And in this, with the new Pope and everything, in that, I think it was the second or the third day when he met the press. Did you notice? And there is this, they were in this building. I have never been there. I've just been, which they call the Paul VI room or something like that. Okay. And it's very, very modern. And right at the back, there is something. To me, it looks very weird. Okay, it looked as if it was that same little angel thing. And there are lots of, I don't know, perhaps if you're there, it's very beautiful. Perhaps it's a beautiful work of art if you are there yourself. From here, from behind the camera, I saw, what is that? It looked like roots out of trees and things, and very complicated things. Dark. And then this angel thing. And I thought, this is, and I remember your picture. I thought, is this the same angel thing? Did you notice that at all, or not?
Yeah.
No.
I've noticed it, and I don't think it's a coincidence, and I think it mimics Fatima with the broken heart, with the tree coming up through. There's a
right opposite that they build this church against the original one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of, I think it'll come out in my presentation today, that there's this enmity, and when the Catholic Church is strong, the synagogue is weak, and when the church is weak, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil takes over in this Kabbalah, and I think that's pretty much what's happening. Okay, I mean, I think it's irrefutable, frankly.
Have you ever thought of going to other places like Well, you couldn't go into the Vatican and take pictures, I suppose, but have you thought of going there and see what you find in Rome?
We're considering going in November on a pilgrimage with a traditional priest from the United States, and I want to go specifically for that. Um, it-
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I hope you come back to us and tell us. Okay, so go ahead then. I will keep quiet and let you
Okay,
talk from now on. Okay, go
I
ahead.
will share my presentation now. I'm not sure if it's on the there. Is it pulled up yet?
Nope.
Okay, I just shared it. It should pop up.
Oh, here it is. Yes, I see it now. Christ, Antichrist. Is that the one that you mean?
That's the one, and it should be on the presenter mode now.
Yes. Yes, I can see
So
it.
uh, once again, I'll just preload this by saying that we live in very confusing times on purpose. We are bombarded with images and messaging and narratives that are meant to confuse us, and also to discredit the Catholic Church and her symbols and her icons. And if we go back to the initial founding of the church and some of the initial symbols, you have the Chi on the left, which is the first two letters of Christ in Greek. And then on the right, we have a symbol of the Antichrist, which is X. And it's the revelation and the method of what's happening today in 2025 is this revealing of what's going on. And I think that's why Twitter was changed to X. It's a major communications channel globally. And what's at stake is the destruction of the old and the mystical body of Christ in that hierarchy. This is Pope Innocent III's quote. The Creator set up two great lights in the heavens, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. In the same way, the church has set up two great lights on earth, the greater light being the Pope, God bless him, and to rule over our souls, and the lesser light being the King to rule over our bodies. Just as the moon's light comes from the sun, does the power of the King come from the Pope. The more closely a king is willing to follow the Pope's rule, the greater his light will be. And then that model is not well taken by Lucifer. And so through the madness of the Kabbalah, the goal is for man to become his own God. And that would take a whole presentation to explain. It's not even worth it. It's just madness. But what it ultimately is about is where man can achieve a knowledge of life and death and how to surpass it through the Kabbalah, but mainly through his ego. And so these are what these are the two forces that are clashing today, and where the one on the right, the one that's concerned about me, has been victorious the last century. You got two operating systems. You've got the old operating system, which has the crucifix at the top with Christ on the cross and the suffering that is inherent to Catholic faith, the Catholic faith. We have to carry our own cross and suffer if we expect to make it through the narrow gate. And you got symbols from the Rosary to the Holy Spirit, to the Archangel Michael, and then to the Blessed Virgin Mary and Lady Guadalupe. And then on the right, you've got your pyramid, which is a trifecta of the mystical, the evil Luciferian trinity of Horus and Isis and Osiris, with the symbols of the star, which we see on so many flags, American flag, the Texas flag, across the world in blue and red, of course. And then the symbols of Our Lady Liberty, a gift from Freemasonic France to the United States, a Masonic gift, and all the other symbols that go with it. And then as you go down the list, you have a heart, where Christianity and Catholicism is based on love, and on the right, it's death. You've got the whole issue of earth, where Catholicism was earth-centered. God created the earth, and the Lucifer is heliocentric, focusing on the sun. We are created by God. God created man. But the other system, the Darwinian system, is we evolved from apes, the evolution. You have monarchy with the crown versus the top hat of Abe Lincoln in republics that replaced the monarchies. You have the cowboy hat representing private property, and on the right, the demolition of private property through communist Marxist movements in the fist. You've got the Catholic Church on the left, and actually the cathedral as a center of civic life, and on the right, you've got the Freemason Lodge, the courthouse, excuse me. That's the center of civic life in the United States, for instance. And then the Vatican at the bottom on the left, and on the right, your Freemason Lodge. And so those are the two pillars of the two operating systems of gay. And then in the middle, I just put, helping in this transition from the old to the new, you've got the ecumenism movement led by deceased Billy Graham, 33rd degree Mason, Rick Warren, Robert Schuller from California. They're all Masons. And then, of course, you have many a pope since 1958 who has been saying that all religions will lead to salvation. So on the left, you got, once again, Christ the King in the old system. And on the right, you've got man. You got the papacy and the Catholic Church. On the right, you have what Father Fahey called organized naturalism, which is based on the Talmud, the Jewish Talmud, which is not Judaism. It's a new religion that was created after AD 70. You've got Catholic monarchy, you've got your Masonic republics, your kings. And when you don't have a king, you can name it what you want, communism, fascism, or democracy, but what it really is an oligarchy, because the money always controls the politicians. You've got a sacramental society and Catholic Christendom, with the cathedral once again at the center of civic life, whereby men strive to be chivalrous, honorable, and modest, and chaste. And sin is addressed in the confessional, and society as a result grows and prospers. But in our republic, which the United States, 250 years later, just walk outside and you'll see what has happened through detaching the church from the state. You have the courthouse and the Freemason Lodge in the same block. You have vulgarity, profanity, sodomy, usury, and idolatry that rule the roost. They dominate, and you can't say anything about it. You can't speak out about it. You have to keep your mouth shut because it's freedom of speech, the First Amendment. And if you do speak out, you might have to worry about the Second Amendment, where you're going to get shot. Christ the King model, God created man, and in the Darwinian model, the Freemasonic model, we evolved, and we're constantly evolving. Priests, they absolve mortal sin, and in the new system, thanks to Freud, you just go to psychiatrists, get your medicine, and blame someone else, and they throw you back on the street to continue your madness. On the left, you've got Christ the King again, whose land ownership forms the foundation of our economy and principally of our family, which ultimately gives you order in society. And in the New World Order model, private property is evil, and you have extreme forces in place today to try to eliminate them, and that gives you disorder. So this is one more just quick way that I was trying to visualize all this through my research. You have Christ as the only way, only through the Son can you make it to those gates, only through Christ. No other way, no other covenant, no other religion. The Catholic faith. Christ died at 33 years old, and as Lucifer and the devil always do, they mock him. And so the highest level of Scottish Rite Freemasonry is 33. And that is ultimately controlled by the synagogue that uses Freemasonry, once again, as we discussed before, as their insurgency. That was their insurgency in Catholic Christendom. And it was based on hate, and it still is based on hate, whereas we're based on love. And that's the advantage that they've taken, is we never operate under the condition of you're guilty before proven innocent. We always give people the benefit of the doubt, and the enemy operates through a model of hate, where it's trickery and deceit. So what's happened is these two models, Christendom has crumbled, and this global slavery model that will be potentially through a system of Noahide, a new world religion that will be run for us by the people at the top. We were told to.
Can I ask a question about the word synagogue, because it might be confusing? Because I think, you see, I think that a lot of, this is my own personal opinion, that it is as if just in Catholicism we have people who dressed as Catholics and they are trying to do as much harm as possible from within. I happen to think that a lot of people are doing actually a lot of damage to the Jewish religion by also dressing themselves as Jewish and not being so, being atheists. What I find, for example, with what is happening at the moment in the Middle East, I am surprised to see how many Jewish, ordinary Jewish people are against what is happening, and they are very sincere. They're very sincere. And so those people are people who hold to that religion, okay? But there are many people who I think are atheists and they take cover under the religion. And they're doing actually quite a lot of harm to not only to the religion, but actually to the ordinary Jews, because everything puts them together. Do you agree with that, or am I?
I
What?
would, to make sure that
I'm a
I
little
don't
bit
add,
closer. I hear you
not
very far away.
to be clear, not to create confusion. Modern Judaism is Talmudic Judaism or Rabbinic Judaism, which was a religion created after the collapse of the temple in 70 AD. That's that is not my words; these are words from the Jewish Encyclopedia. So they consider themselves the Pharisees. So the Pharisees, if you study the Pharisees and the Sadducees and know who they were and their roots back into Babylonia and then extend back to Egypt, that's where the bad blood came from that God was always chastising and sending other armies to destroy. And so they're the
But
ones
there
who
are,
took
but there
over.
are some, but there are some Jews who are. Uh, there is some confusion there because there are Orthodox Jews who actually believe in the Torah. I'm getting here into something I don't know very much about. It's just a question. But then the confusion is that there is another group that also call themselves um, traditional Jews, and they are from the 19th century. But there are some Orthodox Jews that actually, um, try to follow the Torah and not necessarily the Talmud, which is really 5th century. I mean, it started before, but it's interpretations of interpretations and so on. But the ones who just, attach themselves to the Torah, those are religious. I was listening to one rabbi and all he about what is happening in the Middle East, and I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, because everything he was saying, I said yes. That could be said by, a good, honest Catholic priest. I mean, these are people, who follow the rule of God there. But I think it's a very tiny minority. I understand. I'm not sure.
Well, I don't have an opinion. I just know what I've studied, and what I think the most important thing is that Pontius Pilate said that Christ was innocent, and the Pharisees said, "Kill him." And if it wasn't for that, and they rejected their Messiah, they would not have rejected reason and logos, and it sent them into a tailspin of disorder. So even if it's an Orthodox, and I have friends who are, this has nothing to do with the people, it has to do with the faith, the religion, a religion that to this day is denying Jesus Christ as Messiah and that wants to rebuild a temple when Christ said, "Leave no stone unturned." So I do think that the Jewish people, the average Jew since the diaspora after the destruction of the temple has been used as cannon fodder by the people at the top. But they need anti-Semitism, so to speak, or they need the attack on the Jewish people to advance their agenda, which is to bring about their Messiah, which in Catholic teaching is the Antichrist. And I think that's kind of what's at stake. And I don't think this is about people; it's a spiritual war. And so I don't. I
No,
have.
but that's my point, John, that a lot of the ordinary Jewish people, the ordinary people throughout history, have actually been used by those
Yeah,
at the very top who take advantage of whatever situation. And when, things get bad, they move away and they disappear. And the ones who
yeah,
paid the price were the people who were just, just following their religion, really. I mean,
very
and
true.
yeah,
True.
yeah. So I
Yeah,
think I
I
think
agree
they're
with that.
being used. That's what I mean. That
Yeah,
sometimes just as the Catholic Church is used. I think a lot of bad people cloak themselves, and they are not. I mean, they are atheists or something, but they cloak themselves under this banner of of the religion, and I think they've been terribly dishonest actually, and they're not helping the rest of the Jewish population.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly correct. Yeah, I agree with you.
Mm.
So that's good to clarify that because this is really about this typology is the culmination of the Old Testament and the fulfillment of the Old Testament through Jesus's birth and death and resurrection, where the new Israel had us Gentiles grafted onto it, into the tree. So we also became Jews. We became the new Israelites. So I don't think this, and for at least from me, my perspective, this is it's easy to see on the spiritual level what spiritual level is going on, and I do have a lot of grief, I would say, or anxiety about the Jewish people because they will be punished again for what's happening. You can see it developing in the media already. You can see this whole narrative. It's all over again. Here it comes. Like, oh my goodness. So that's why I don't want to be. I want to be forthright in what I present because in my own research, it's come back. That is what's going on. That is the enmity, the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. So, but just to continuing here that if you follow the roots of abortion and all the isms, they go back there. They go back to, and it is in the Talmud, and it's no doubt it's still used, very prevalent, where it's the dominant book over the Torah in most cases. But nevertheless, when you see the collapse of free markets, the collapse of life, and also kind of the mocking of Christianity, you have to pull the curtain back on the opposite side. You're going to see who's behind the restriction of our growth in our markets and also who's pushing the Darwinian narrative through global academia. And at the bottom of that, you have a foundation of what we are supposed to do in the kind of the formation of our conscience and examination of our conscience, at least daily, if not weekly and monthly. It's based on the Ten Commandments, whereby this new system of organized naturalism is based on the Sustainable Development Goals. They're if you go through them very deeply, which I have many times, this is kind of the new system, what it's based on. It's based on nature, where man has been put out, where we are actually now sinning against nature. So going into that, you got the Catholic sacraments that are led by in persona Christi, which is the priest, baptism, the Eucharist, confirmation, reconciliation, extreme unction, matrimony, and holy orders. And you have your opposite, which is pretty apparent after 2020, where the new priest is a scientist. And I say that word loosely. It's their scientists, people that they've gone through their schools, they've been selected to be the representatives. Of course, that doesn't mean science as a whole. Whereby the sacrament of abortion, vaccines, masks, psychoanalysts, ventilators, the whole nine yards. It's pretty black and white, and then you have the same issues in the marketplace where you have in the old world subsidiarity where everything revolved around the parish at a local level. Everyone knew everybody and the community worked together versus globalism, which is insensitive. And this kind of started after 1517 with Martin Luther and the Protestant Revolution. And that opened the doors for the Enlightenment. And then it just went downhill from there. But what I think is interesting about this, talking about guilds, it says the guild is combined two of the most important points of Catholic social theory, the principle of subsidiarity, as it later became known, and the distrust of purely economic motives in the conduct of human affairs, which rules the world today is money. And I think the last holdout is agriculture, where we still have somewhat of a lifestyle that it's a vocation. We're not just doing a job, where we love what we do and money is a consequence. But then you go to the modern era, and I have a very close family member who is a member of YPO, Young Professionals Organization. So I followed it since my youth. I've known other people who've been put into it. And there's our logo at the top, and there's your new order. And guess how many triangles there are? 13. Yeah. And then there's your criteria of what it represents is we're the world's largest leadership community of chief executives, the CEOs. So that's who is at the commanding heights of the modern economy. Post World War II, Bretton Woods, the new financial system, debt slavery, etc. The majority of those CEOs are in YPO as well as the Council of Foreign Relations. And what's the criteria to get in there? It doesn't say, no, you've got good virtue. No, you are at least this age, you're a CEO, and you have to have this much, a minimum of $2.5 million in annual employee compensation. So
how much?
$2.5 million of employee compensation, 15 full-time employees. And what basically it's saying is any company over around a $50 million mark, you're on their radar screen and you will be taken over. That's pretty much common in the business world and international business. Once you get to a certain height, you expect to be bought out or knocked out, and come consolidated into the pyramid structure that's there. So the 20th century was the coup d'etat. It was the takeover. World War I eliminated the last holdout of Catholic monarchies, and this is the way I like to look at it. And I'm sorry I wrote this by hand.
That's fine.
I ran out of time. Yeah, I have to translate. And I give credit to Bishop Williamson from England. That I've watched some of his presentations on this, and it really made sense to me as an American. Is the old model was God at the top, and God's model as a king was always a monarchy, with the mother of the king being the queen, Virgin Mary. So you have God, king, aristocrats, middle class, the workers, and at the bottom you have animals, vegetation, and minerals. And the revolutionary process, which is run through Judeo-Masonic, it's called the fifth column, which every Catholic book I've ever read on the subject, including the last one the last formal book was in the 60s by Maurice Pinay, which was The Plot Against the Church, which was handed out to everyone at the Vatican II Council because they knew what was going on. But it's called the fifth column, and it's that column you can't see inside society and business that infiltrates everything, and it slowly steers that boat away from its course heading. And over a course of hundreds of years, you're no longer going due north, you're going due south. And this is the process of how it happened. With the Protestant Revolution, soon came Henry VIII, who we talked about before, but he liked a girl named Anne and he wanted to marry, and the Catholic bishop wouldn't let the Catholic king, and so the Catholic king started his own papacy through the Anglican Church. So he butted up against God as king. That disobedience against authority then was followed suit with George Washington, who was an aristocrat, who then butted up against King George. And then Abraham Lincoln, who was the middle class, rejected the aristocrats and waged a war against the South. He started the war. The proof is there. And he didn't have to have war. He chose it. And so he he's responsible for the collapse of the aristocrats. And then came FDR, the New Deal during the 30s, and he went up as a worker or a Marxist against the middle class. And once his job was done, there's really nothing left except for the one worlders, the one world government people that mobilized to destroy the welfare state. And now we have no authority. There's no authority left. We're totally a boat without a rudder, going to hit ground pretty soon. And so if you, on the right, at the top, I just put down important dates: 1517, 1717, the Protestant Revolution. It wasn't a Reformation, it was a revolution. And then
Okay, go through the dates. 1517.
The Protestant Revolution, Martin Luther,
Yeah.
which opened the doors for the Enlightenment that then consolidated liberalism through a secret society called Freemasonry in 1717 that was deployed across Catholic Christendom, the Europe and the Americas, to infiltrate and take over governments and to destroy Catholic control and put in Freemasonic control. And that, of course, the two biggest fights there was 1776, the American Revolution, and then the French Revolution in 1789, which it's kind of hard to deny, but you look at the layout of Washington, D.C. and how it was structured with Masonic symbolisms. And in the gifting of the Statue of Liberty by France, we have to kind of draw a line in the sand. Are we with Christ and his church, or are we with the Antichrist? There's no gray area, really. And I know where I choose to be. And then you have 1917, which was in the middle of World War I. Of course, the Bolsheviks, their revolution, their fight came after Fatima, after Our Lady of Fatima warned the children about the errors of Russia before they ever started. And so that's pretty profound to me. So that saw the destruction of monarchy, replacement by republics. And then you saw a war of the aristocrats against the Democrats with Abe Lincoln fighting the Southern Democrats, and FDR being a Democrat, then fighting the Republicans in the New Deal, socialism. And now we're at the bottom of the scale, which you can call it paganism. I think a better term is organized naturalism. So that then goes to another hand-drawn chart that's really quick, but I think this is very, very important to be able to have a situational awareness of where we stand today. With everyone across the world, all the kids are taught that there's climate change. You have to take as fact that theories such as the theory of evolution are real. You have to take that for fact.
Is it possible that you can zoom it in so we can see it a little bit better? I don't know whether you can. Can you make it bigger?
I tried to. I'm going to use my arrow. Can you see my arrow?
Yes, yes. If you can read it, yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to see my code word in parentheses is R. R stands for Rothschild or Rockefeller money. So you had the Bolshevik Revolution was funded from Wall Street by the multiple owners of the Federal Reserve that happened to be funded and started 4 years before the Bolshevik Revolution. You've got the Balfour Declaration, which set the stage for Zionism to be achieved with the creation of Israel in 1948. Of course, that is the Lord Rothschild's involvement in that. And then you have BVM, Blessed Virgin, the Blessed Virgin, Mary of Fatima, Our Lady of Fatima. And underneath, you have the creation of these substructures of government that were set up in order to induce government, to drive the ship, just like a captain would steer a boat, whereby the ship in these fake republics, in these fake elections, are selected. And you have the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House, which was created in 1920, and it was created in order to ensure that a one world government would be established, mainly the League of Nations, which didn't happen because the U.S. still had some integrity and refused to join. And so the Chatham House, well, I've been to Chatham House and spoken there, by the way, and it is a creepy place. They were influential in the creation of the Council of Foreign Relations in the United States to be kind of the backdrop of who steers the executive branch in foreign policy in the U.S. And that was founded 2 years later in 1922. And of course, after the collapse of Germany, the creation of the United Nations was immediate in 1945. Within years of the creation in Basel, Switzerland, the Bank of International Settlements, not the creation of the use of the BIS as a backdrop to the Bretton Woods banking system. And what's interesting is United Nations, you have the direct tie into Theosophy, Lucis Trust, used to be Lucifer Trust, and you just can't make this stuff up. There's no reason to, it's true. And then soon thereafter, the creation of the State of Israel, which in and of itself is a part of an ad hoc global intelligence system that utilizes the CIA and MI6 as part of global intelligence for the high financing banks and for coups and overthrows. It has nothing to do with you and me, of course. So then you have the structure of all the conspiracy stuff, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, whose purpose is eugenics to control the population. But they all were created on either Rockefeller land, including the CFR and including the United Nations. That was Rockefeller land in New York, blocks away from each other. The first meeting, the Club of Rome in Italy, a Rockefeller estate, creation Trilateral Commission, the whole 9 yards. I mean, they're kind of out in the open about it. But then you've got the creation of 3 apparently independent institutions, the World Council of Churches, which was heavily funded by the Rockefeller Foundation in its initial life, that then was instrumental in a Union Theological Seminary that was also funded by the Rockefeller Foundation to create these millennial pastors who were going to be pushing a theology contrary to Catholic doctrine, including the social gospel. And that was simultaneous with the creation of World Wildlife Fund, which is it a coincidence that was created in 1961 with, just less than 2 decades after the destruction of Nagasaki and Dresden and firebombing and killing hundreds of thousands of civilians? And you're talking about climate change and endangered species. What a joke. And World Wildlife Fund was created by Prince Bernhard and Prince Philip, so King Charles's dad. And the first CEO was Godfrey Rockefeller. And the second CEO I'll get into later, he's someone I know personally. So that on the right is your Global Environmental Facility, founded by the Rothschilds in 1991. So these 3, one is controlling religion, one is controlling mapping of global resources, the World Wildlife Fund and the Global Environmental Facilities to provide the capital necessary to lock up those resources and take them out of the economy and leave them for themselves. And so part of the drive, the spear, is the narrative of climate change, global warming, and which led to the Earth Charter in the 1980s. There was also a Rockefeller endeavor with Maurice Strong, who was a communist he was a Rockefeller oil business contact that was a communist who started Earth Charter with Stephen Rockefeller. And that created behind that the New Age movement, which then you can start to see why you had the World Council of the Churches, why they funded it. All this stuff is they were started independently to come merge together for our times for this decade. And behind this, they launched the whole climate change initiative in Rio de Janeiro in 1992 at the first climate conference. What's incredible is that they created this is warfare, because it takes extreme organizational skills and capital to be able to deploy something like this. They created thousands of nonprofit organizations, thousands, underneath the Climate Action Network, to push this agenda into the public space and make it a political issue.
Just
Ultimately, man-made the problem.
if I may interrupt just for a second, since you mentioned Brazil and you gave us such a good exposition last week about what is happening there in terms of religion. And I see Brazil coming up again and again and again in all kinds of places where you wouldn't expect it. Here it is again in 92, the eco climate thing stuff. Question, this is going to sound funny, but they are a founding member of BRICS. Should Putin be worried about Brazil?
That's very prescient.
I mean, by Putin, I mean the other BRIC nations. I mean, should they trust Brazil completely to be on their side, kind of thing?
In 1889, Brazil was handed over by the Catholic monarchy to Freemasonry, and their first emblem was a star, just like the Texas star. So it's been over 136 years that Brazil has been in the hands, in the public space of Freemasonry. Every new county, every new courthouse built in the Amazon frontier that didn't exist 30 years ago, it's run by Freemasons. So the Freemason Lodge is there. It's one of the first buildings to be established. So that I would say that Brazil has no control of its own destiny. It has been constructed per my last presentation on by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds pretty much, I think, controlled Africa, and the Rockefellers were the kind of the captains of the ship of Latin America. And that by no means means they're the people in charge. I'm just saying they're the figureheads. But you have to have organizational structure, and just the world's a big place. So you can look at the infrastructure, what happened in Brazil back in the 50s. They put in place the conditions for today. It started at Harvard. I'll be talking about it in a second. The control of agriculture. And what I think they're doing is they're turning off the faucet of agricultural production in the United States, and they're turning it on full blast in Brazil, what I believe is to create the conditions for another world war, whereby the BRICS nations, China, Russia, India, and Iran, they have their breadbasket being Brazil that can supply everything they need and then some. And the United States is it's getting sunk to where we are going to have a heck of a time producing food. And I think they're creating those conditions for another type of 1940s. My mom would tell me that they couldn't buy leather, they couldn't have beef, they had gasoline rations. And imagine today, with the control these people have, that they're setting the United States up for something terrible, is what I think. So I don't know if it's the fear of Brazil, other than Brazil is simply a part of the machine that is controlled by the traders, it's controlled by the banks, it's controlled by the slaughter plants that are controlled by Vanguard and BlackRock. So I'm a mestizo. I'm half American, half Brazilian, and I see both of us in dire straits. So that kind of answers your question. But you're very right about Brazil. It is a critical player in the fight that's about to happen. That's for sure. So I think that's why when you look at, can I continue? I think I don't want to waste time on it. If another slide, I can kind of dive into it, which is right here. And there you can see I got an email from Nubank, and that's a digital bank. I know the founders of it. It's a digital bank coming in for the CD, the digital currency. Right up here on the right where my email just popped in. That's the Brazilian bank set up by the oligarchs. So this is a culmination of my research. I did it for myself, where I'm at the very bottom, Brazilian family-owned farms and ranches. And I started to question stuff that I was seeing inside the environmental movement as an observer. And so I kind of back engineered, starting with one person. Who does he work for? Who pays for his salary? And why did he tell me that the environmental movement was threatened by the work that we were doing here? And he said, because you're producing too many results. And so that left me dumbfounded. And this is a result of about 9 years of research. It's on this table here. But if you start at the very top, you've got the enmity, and that's where it goes. And then you have the command and control structure in the middle. And then you have banking, private banking, through investment banks, through hedge funds, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, Vanguard, Blackstone, Carlyle Group, etc. And then on the right, you've got the Bank of International Settlements and the Bretton Woods central banking system that established a central bank in every country in the Southern Hemisphere after World War II. If they said no, then gunboat diplomacy solved the problem, or a CIA hit. And it forced the acceptance of this banking system in order to create this debt slavery. So on the private banking side, it funnels down to the transnational corporations that took root in all these countries, which totally eliminated independent businesses, private businesses. They created their tax foundations to create proxies, to be proxy warriors for them. At the same time, they're tax evading. Those tax exempt foundations then fund like the MacArthur Foundation, Heinz, Packard, the Gordon Betty Moore Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, George Soros's Open Society. They co-fund along with government money through USAID, which recently was supposedly busted in the scandal. I don't think it was busted. I just don't think they need it anymore. I think they're just shutting it down because they don't need them anymore. And that goes to the politicians who you have two wings of the same bird. You got your little left wing that flaps for 4 years, and you got your right wing with yellow hair, and he flaps for 4 years. But they're flying the same bird, and the bird is flying right where it's a phoenix. It's the phoenix. It's where they want that phoenix to go. And you know that their control of NATO, their control of these are the USAID, NORAD, the IDH, and GHC are development agencies for Western countries, the Dutch, the Norwegians, the Germans, the US. They all have them. And then they fund the nonprofits. And then the nonprofits are divided up into sectors: religious, social justice, environmental, education. And so I'm focusing on an environmental because that's where I was acting. And at the top is World Wildlife Fund. Then you got the Nature Conservancy, National Wildlife Federation, Woods Hole Research Center, which is the fake science, Environmental Defense Fund, which is legal, Greenpeace, which is an attack dog. And then underneath the bottom row, at the very bottom down here, they all begin with an I, Instituto, or Institute. And those institutes there were all funded by USAID between 1991 and 1996, right as Eco 92 was happening in Brazil. They were all created by the CIA. So what else do I need to say? Nothing. They're not there to do good. They're there to infiltrate and to push policy. And then on the right, with debt slavery, which there's some good books on that. Gods of Money by William Engdahl is one. Food as a Weapon, Population Control. And then you can go through the list that most people watching probably know about all this already. But it goes into detail about what the ultimate attack is against family, farms, and ranches to eliminate private property, consolidate land into the hands of corporate entities. So it's a type of corporate fascism that's its principal goal is to wipe me out, knock me off of my horse and take my land. And that was written in the business plan back in 1950s at Harvard. And here's a dirty slide. It's kind of, but this was Catholic guilds. These were rules of Catholic guilds: price control, wage control, quality control, and advertising control. And on the backdrop, you're going to see the sun god of Walmart. And you got price control
Can you read it for us very quickly? Because
Sure.
it's not, the price control. Can you read it for us?
Price control is the guild decided on the price of each item. All bakers, for example, charge the same price for a loaf of bread, the price that was set by the guild. Wage control, all workers had to be paid the same so that the best workers could not be enticed away with better wages somewhere else. Quality control, everyone had to satisfy the quality standards set by their respective guild. No one was allowed to sell shoddy goods. Advertising control, no guild member could advertise their wares. The guilds wanted people to think that all wares offer the same quality no matter what shop sold them. So if you look at Walmart, you've got price gouging that's wiped out Main Street United States, Main Street Brazil. They undercut everybody and drive you out of business. They hire elderly people because they don't pay anything. And so they're undercutting your wages. It's a rock bottom business model. their quality control is all from China. Everything breaks within weeks. Nothing lasts anymore. It used to last when in the United States when it was American made, and no longer. And then advertising control, there was no advertising. So if you look at today, marketing departments and advertising departments at schools and universities,
they're the most important parts of it, I think.
They're it. And that's why the CEO of World Wildlife Fund is Carter Roberts, who was a marketer, if I'm not mistaken, head of marketing at Procter & Gamble and Gillette before he became the head of World Wildlife Fund. He's a head marketer. He's a head, I don't want to say the word, but it comes out the backside of a bull. They're lying. They're the professional liars and they're professional propagandists. So that, here is staring in the face part of the collapse of society and what has happened. And then you got this consolidation and monopoly that is driven by an actual business plan that was funded by the Rockefellers in the 50s, using a guy named Lonteef, who was a Eastern Russian Jew, to basically simulate the Standard Oil monopoly model for all other industries. And here we are in 2025, drive down any main street in the United States, and those are the stores you see on the left. There's two of each, two, maximum three, of every type of thing, whether you're buying Western wear or you're going to a grocery store or to a pharmacy. You've always got Walgreens and CVS on the same block across the street from each other. Now, that doesn't happen by coincidence. So, that is the proof's in the pudding. And you've got on the right, it's talking to what's behind this effort, this economic power. It's consolidated through these transnationals, and these companies are cross-pollinated. The ownership is all cross-pollinated. 7 to 10% of all these companies is a combination of BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. So, and they're the ones pushing the sustainability rhetoric. And you got to be kidding me. They're talking about sustainability. Well, first of all, didn't know what it means, but on the right, it's talking about, I'm going to have to move this a little bit to read it. Large corporations which are involved in sustainability, they order policies that create market advantages for them, either through regulations that disadvantage competitors, or because they are at the forefront of green replacement technology. This is done with promises of saving the environment and the earth from destruction, and gathers public opinion, which at all costs wishes to avoid such a doomsday scenario. It is an ideal construction which outwardly appears as kindness and care for the planet. Criticism of this is then interpreted as being against the planet's well-being. So, anyway, I don't need to go any further than that. So here is specific to beef production and specific to the United States and Brazil. There's my model. I think I showed it before. It's a simpleton model, but it gets the point across. You have the high finance that controls governments. You have a pseudo government, United Nations, which passes all sorts of stuff, including Endangered Species Act. They copied the American Endangered Species Act, the CITES, CITES, and they use that globally to impose restrictions on private property and production and farming and ranching. And so through this pseudo government, then they influence through lobby national governments as well as businesses. And these businesses and government are used as attack dogs against private property myself. I'll use me as an example. So every day, every year, we have more regulations to sustain. I spend more time in bureaucracy in Brazil fighting fights of stuff I never did than actually applying myself to trying to make a living. And on the other hand, you got the businesses who are demanding certification, licenses, clean this, sustainable that.
Yeah.
And it's all coming from the top. And then you've got government that issue moratoriums. John, you can't export your beef this year because you have been bad, because your neighbor deforested. And what happens? Supply bills, you can't sell your product, the price goes down, they take the moratorium away, and their companies buy up the product for nothing. That happens every year in Brazil. And then at the bottom is meat. So on the right, I showed this last time, but this is important. That slide on the right was World Wildlife Fund slide that I also saw at a Sustainable Trade Initiative meeting in Europe. several years ago. And the red arrow right here, it says that is the threat that needs to be reduced by them. That's a threat. And that threat is me, it's producers, me. So what I was doing in Brazil was we created a land stewardship platform, an IT platform over here on the left, that was funded by them in order to solve their problem.
Yeah.
Until I caught on.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
so they asked me for our data, which is all confidential, to give to these people up here. And I said, no, senor. And what happened? They cut all our funding from within 3 weeks, we lost all our funding from Europe, from Norway, from Holland, from the United States, USAID, and from foundations all at once. It's all daisy chained.
Gracious.
Yeah. And that's what really set me on this saga of trying to understand what was going on. I said, no, this is military. This is not happenstance. So that's where this all started. And then it gets really deep. I don't have to go into it. I'm just using this as an example about the collapse of Catholic Christendom and this living hell that we live in today. Mainly farmers and ranchers live with extreme stress, but no one knows it because they control the media and they do not relay this to society, especially to urban society. So here's a recent 2021, I don't know if it's a thesis from it goes to the Wharton School undergraduate research, the integration of blockchain technology in the beef industry, a comparative analysis. And so whenever I see IT, blockchain, and beef, all that means to me is control. They want to control this like they control dairy industry, the pork industry, and the poultry industry and swine industry, and knocked out already 85% of all those independent producers that have been put out of business the last 40 years, thanks to the input-output business plan. And the last beef protein industry to conquer is beef. And that's what this is about. And on the abstract, you can see where the guy says, previous papers discuss implementation of blockchain in the beef industry without a focus on the variations between beef industries and supply chains in various countries. A gap this paper aims to address. So that's that gap right there. That's the threat. Yeah, and here it's coming from Wharton, which is one of the key secret society Wharton School / Skull and Bones Masonic, factories of CEOs in the world. I have friends that went there, and they lead massive industries today. So here's how academia justifies taking John's land, which is a looting machine, just like they did in Catholic England after the Protestant rebellion. Globalization of the Amazon soy and beef industries. So this guy right here, Daniel Nepstad, is a PhD from Woods Hole Research Center. He was at Yale University School of Forestry guy. And he co-founded my nonprofit with me here. So I know him intimately. And he published this years ago. And I was trying to understand this stuff, trying to really say, what is going on? But here he is, it's out in the open. If you pull back the curtain, you want to see the wizard and the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. What he's really saying is, how do we turn Brazil into a food factory so when we knock the living hell out of the United States in the coming war? That's what he's really saying. And so I see this today as high treason. It's high treason.
Why would they do that, John? Why would they? I understand what you're saying, but why would they go against the United States as a country?
Because that is the fifth column. The fifth column has no nationality. They may call themselves American. They may call themselves Dutch, but they're working behind the scenes for an international. That's where you got to go back to rabbinic Judaism and to the Kabbalah, and to a communist state of utopia, which represents tikkun olam, or the repair of the world. And then you have the materialistic side, which is usury, which is warfare in monopoly. So you have warfare and monopoly on one hand.
Yeah. I understand. I understand that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Woods Hole Research Center was founded by George Woodwell, who had been prior to that at World Wildlife Fund. He is a Rockefeller agent. He's a Rockefeller agent. So Woods Hole was founded by the Rockefellers to create climate science. and climate science to justify climate change policy that would be used as far as the U.S. deploying post-World War II the battering ram to knock these countries over, and then to put in the digital grid, the infrastructure to control all natural resources. That's what it's about. So to destroy the United States will have to happen for global control eventually. Once they no longer need the U.S. and its clout, they just pull the carpet out underneath, and that's what I think is happening slowly right now in the U.S. for that to happen in the next decade, 5 years or 10 years, something like that.
But my question was, I understand the using the let's say this international finance group thing, using the United States as a country in order to benefit themselves. I understand that. Using its military, everything else. I don't understand why they would want to do that with the food in order for another country, Brazil, to take over. I don't understand why they would want to necessarily make it so bad for the people of that country, of which they are taking advantage, yeah, for world power. But why would they want to make it so difficult for the American peoples in the area of food? Why that? I don't quite connect the dots.
So the post-World War II, you had William Donovan, Wild Bill Donovan, the head of the OSS, that then became the Office of Strategic Services, heavily involved in Italy in the P2 Mafia, Operation Gladio. And then after that, they set up the CIA, and the Rockefellers hand-picked Allen Dulles to be the head of the CIA and John Foster Dulles to be Secretary of State. So you control foreign policy and you control intelligence, not for me, John, but for them, and so the policy itself, and I learned this in where I met my wife in this beef, basically an MBA for beef production. I never forget a professor saying, the first day of class, if you're here to make money in the beef industry, there's a door, leave now. This is in 1992. If you're here to treat this seriously and to learn how to break even and to pass on your land to your kids, then you're in the right place, because everything is stacked against you, where food today is used by our government as a weapon. And that was told to me by my professor in 1992. And he later went on to be the head of the USDA's stockyards department. So this is part of the it's very similar to how you use somebody to achieve something and you discard them afterwards. In 1938, the Council of Foreign Relations was discussing how to divvy up Europe after the collapse of Germany. Okay, 1938, and a part of that policy was, we will not get the United States involved until we know for sure that Britain, Germany, and Russia have exhausted all their manpower and resources and are at a breaking point. And we'll bring in the U.S. when we know we have complete victory. So that says it all right there. The U.S. was used. We were duped to go in and to fight another Christian nation. And I'm not saying Hitler was certainly a product of the very same people. There's no doubt about it. But they that's what they did. And now what they're doing is they've used us to consolidate their control globally, and they end up getting rid of us. They're going to have to starve us out. They're going to have to put us into great misery. And if you don't, Ireland and the potato famine, that's where my family came to the U.S. The English army just deployed one half of their military to Ireland, a little bitty country, to ensure that all the food was exported as the famine took over, and to cause massive starvation of perhaps 3 to 5 million people, and then another million or so to go as indentured servants in the United States.
Yes, I read that it wasn't that it was a bad harvest or something like that. It was kind of done on purpose to kind of starve them, right?
That's in 1933, the Ukraine, the Holodomor, the same thing happened. So that's what I think they have set up for the U.S. That's what I think they have set up, and they have the conditions. They destabilized us by moving our industry to China back in the 80s. We're a service economy today. We do not have the wherewithal as an urban society to produce food. So if they, through conservation easements and parks and regulations and all the attacks and economic warfare against farmers and ranchers, they're killing the industry. In the last 5 years, 160,000 private ranchers went out of business in the last 5 years. So it's imploding. There's no one to fill that slot except for a bunch of yahoos doing regenerative agriculture using cow manure as fertilizer. They will never produce the food necessary to supply 330 million people food. And we will not be able to import it because the only people we'll be producing at that scale is Brazil. It's the largest producer of beef, soybeans, tobacco, orange juice, sugar, anything you can imagine. And it produces at half the cost of the United States. So that's what they're doing. And it's even dangerous to say that because it's so blatantly obvious. If you're in the agriculture industry and you have access to high level to CEOs and talk to people, it's obvious what's happening. And if you can cross check that with what people in academia in the United States say. Anyway, this is very well known, but no, I'm not just saying. I have friends in the United States and Brazil. They all see this happening. So that's the reason why the U.S. will be discarded. It will have run its course of as the first Protestant nation in a Catholic Latin America and North America. It will be over, and they're going to discard Protestant America as well, which does not make me happy. I love my country. I love my people. I love my family. I don't like seeing this happen, but that's what I think is happening. So, and then you got the scientists from these universities pushing out material to support the consolidation and the destruction of us using climate change. So the narrative, the drive to change, of course, tornadoes, hurricanes, drought, heavy rains, coastal flooding, heat waves, over and over again, always using red in the imagery. And then I started researching where this all started. Back in 1961, Prince Bernhard, Dr. Rockefeller, the creation of World Wildlife Fund, Environmental Defense Fund. And then I started, my hair in the back of my neck started standing up because I knew these people. It's like, oh my goodness, these are the people I'm working with in Brazil. And I thought they were legitimate. I thought they were honest. I thought that they meant that they wanted to help farmers and ranchers. Anyway, it turns out that they are the top eugenicists, the top people controlling are part of the population control and the destruction of Western fertility is what's happening. So I mean, I don't need to go through all this. It's a lot of information, but just to let you know that I went through organization by organization and saw where their seed funding came from, and it went back to USAID and CIA fingerprints are on it. So once again, going back to food as a weapon. So here is from Costco, and here's part of the narrative. Our world is warming from greenhouse gas emissions. It's clear we face dire consequences if we don't reduce them. This is recent. This is not from, I don't know when it was, a couple years ago. But what I'd put this out there for is, if you're a cavalryman in the American West, or you were a Texas Ranger, and you got into a fight, and the Indians left, and you're the only one surviving. Who attacked us? You pull their arrows out and look how they made their arrows. You know, what kind of fletching, what kind of sinew? Was it buffalo? Was it, mule hide? Whatever. And the same thing applies today. If we want to know who's attacking us, well, let's look and see if they left any sign. When there's your sign is this thing right here. And then you come down to Brazil. This is the Social Entrepreneur Award for 20. Yeah. But look at that. There you go. Well, guess who was nominated for it? Me. So thank goodness I didn't win it. Look at this one. Look at the Skull, Jeffrey Skull, the Skull Foundation. And then you see Conservation International. Then you see the Global Environmental Facility and Population Connection, and then of course Palantir. So, it's obvious that there is something going on behind the scenes. And then this is part of the kind of like Uncle Tom's Cabin that was in the 1850s. It was very influential in creating the warmongering for the war between the states and the United States. You have the same thing here, Population Bomb by Paul Ehrlich, who then co-wrote this book, Eco Science, with John Holdren, who was the head of Woods Hole Research Center when I co-founded my Brazilian organization with his scientists. He's been to my ranch. And this book is about forced sterilization of American women. Forced sterilization, which they did in Brazil in the 1970s by forcing the Brazilian government to allow U.S. Agency for International Development, another way to say it's for international genocide, to force sterilize black women and tie their tubes when they gave birth to the first child. And the estimate was 80% of all black women in Brazil along the coast were sterilized under that program. And those are the people doing it. So these aren't bad people, these are evil people. And there's our common future, Gru Brundtland. She was kind of the figurehead of that book. She was the head of the Global World Socialist Party, also the Prime Minister of Norway at the time. And then this book, The Global Revolution, that kind of sounds similar to that, the globalization of soy. This guy wrote another article called The Global Revolution. So they're getting their marketing from the common source, which is World Wildlife Fund. And then through carbon, it's going to give the United Nations pretty much total control of natural resources through sustainable development. That's what the ultimate goal is. But most importantly, I mean, I guess the main thing I wanted to tell you was that if we just go about our lives like last time I was on going over Freemasonic signs, we are going to see imagery that kills our soul, from the Sistine Chapel on the left to modern art on the right. To the top left is the cathedral in Brasilia. The bottom picture over here is actually the Congress and Senate in Brazil with the Freemasonic pillars, the dome, the uterus. And over here on the right is the town Goiânia, where I lived for many years. I have an office there today with the red pyramid, and there's your uterus again.
Yeah.
And then there's a UN. And there's a commonality between all four of those. It's Oscar Niemeyer, who was the architect, the Brazilian architect of Communist Party. He was Eastern origin from Eastern, a Jew from Eastern Russia, Ashkenazi. And so that then influenced the Rockefeller funded University of Sao Paulo Architecture School, which then developed these two churches I showed last week. So you can see it's the same visual economy they're blasting us with. On the left, you got your Catholic saints, and on the right, you got your modern day saints during COVID that were promoting what we know. And so they're trying to kill us at the end. That's what this is about, is they're trying to kill the truth. It's that simple. And that goes back to X, which is started with. We have conservation labs. If you can see the chevron, and then you can see a pyramid here and a pyramid there. But there's your X. And then here's your rhetoric that's to prevent mass extinction. So subtly what they're saying is we are the problem and we're killing nature. So if you want to know what's behind X, go back to the trifecta of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, the trinity of the mystery religions. And there's your X right there, crossing his chest. And there's your one eye symbol here, and there's your pyramid. And what's interesting, though, if you look at the different categories of madness, alchemy, the occult, Freemasonry, ancient mysteries, and numerology, they all say the same thing. Conflicting forces, transcendence of opposites, hidden knowledge, earth and the divine, meeting of opposing forces, which is Gnosticism, where God is both evil and good, where our Trinitarian God, the only God, is Adonai, who's considered the evil God by the Gnostics. So that brings it down to my last slide, which is why I care about this stuff, because it's very personal to me. And this statue, wood carving of St. Francis is in our front yard here. And
Your front yard. Oh, okay.
yeah, and he's I don't know how tall, but it's 3 times the height of the human, so 15, 18 feet tall. And on the right is a building near our corral, which is the roof just collapsed because tree limbs are falling on top of it. And that picture is organized naturalism because I can't tear that tree down without a permit, and I can't get the permit unless I pay bribes. And the reason I can't do it is because the World Wildlife Fund to put the system in place in Brazil and sent the prosecutors to France to get trained to come back here to punish me. So here, so that's ultimately how this big picture comes down to the local level, and it really makes it very simple. It's I'm Catholic, and I'm Catholic, and that's that simple. And I
And
will not participate.
you have a statue of Saint Francis in your yard, surrounded by you don't know who.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I don't take this stuff lightly, and I don't think that it's hard to grasp this stuff. It takes years and years to understand this, but once you do get it, it's very simple.
Yeah.
And it's not about hate; it's about love, and it's about winning truly the conversion of all souls to the one true faith. That's my only message I have. That's it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Shall we see you next week with something else? Next
I,
Thursday?
I will I will make it happen.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It was most interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're most welcome, Marley. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye, dear. Bye
Welcome.
bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.